الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على محمد وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. So we left off in greater sins. We finished volume 1. We're starting volume 2. We're on the 16th categorized greater sin. The 15th was music in general. The 16th in his book is singing in particular. It says he said the 16th greater sin is singing songs. Traditions have graded it amongst the mortal sins. This fact is clear from the narration of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, which Muhammad ibn Muslim relates to Imam Bakr alayhi salam, said, singing is that sin which has been promised a penalty of fire by Allah. So when we said that any sins promised hellfire or these type of strong narrations or in Quran, then those ones that are promised hellfire are categorized in the greater sins. So due to this fact of these narrations, this singing falls into this category. So he says, what is singing? Sayyid Murtada writes in his book Wasila, he said, singing is haram. It's also haram to listen to a song or sing. However, every melodious sound is not a song. Singing denotes a special way of prolonging the voice and rotating it in the throat. These features are common in sensuous parties. Such type of singing is usually accompanied by music. Common view, what people consider music and what people consider singing is the same, like we discussed in music. He said most of the mujtahideen from amongst the Shia and the experts of the Ahlul Lugha, the Arabic language, they say that singing means the turning and rotating of one's voice in the throat. These types of strains are invariably found in classical music and qawwalis. A prolonged tune of is like he puts a is produced. It said in the dictionary Sihah, it's mentioned that singing is a sound which produces a strange type of sorrow or pleasure to the listener. The other dictionaries almost agree to this definition. So he says in the author's brief, singing or a song sound that makes someone unusually sad or unusually happy. He quotes another book, says, every sound that is produced for entertainment and is capable of exciting passion is known as singing. Same thing we mentioned in with music. He said it could be produced by making it emanate from the throat, like in classical music, or by any other means. In brief, whatever is understood by common sense as a song is haram. So he leaves it onto the follower that they can go to the common usage or urf if this thing falls in category of a song or not. He said, consequently, to recite the Holy Quran, Noha, Marcia, in the tune of songs. This is more sinful than singing songs, for it amounts to insulting and degrading the Quran and Noha or Marcia. And he said, for this reason, this sin deserves punishment. So we can say, like, how can one do that? Maybe there's a famous song that's on the radio that everyone plays, and someone comes and they go over that song and they make it sound exactly the same and the same tones and the same rhythms, but they replace words with something else, or they recite the Quran to make it sound like I don't know, one of these songs, a rock and roll song or a rap song or anything, now and they try to mimic the way the singer does, and they recite Quran like that, for example. He said, Imam Bakr alayhi salam said that singing is that sin which has been promised the penalty of fire by Allah. He had also recited the following verse of the Quran, Surah Luqman, ayat 6, and of men is he who takes instead frivolous discourse to lead astray from Allah's path without knowledge, and to take it. These shall have an abasing chastisement. So the Imam mentioned this ayat, and then he uh, saying that this is in regards to music or singing. He says, bringing together the above verse and the narration of Imam Bakr, singing is understood to be one of the frivolous and evil acts. Other worthless acts are aimless talk or action or poetry, which is of no good to the people. All of these deprive man of benefit. So before, a long time ago, well, I guess people probably still do that, but the poems used to be of a sensuous nature, and they were a lot of effort and time put into these things, but they were more like romantic poems or sensuous. These things fall under that category. Also, when the study of Arabic syntax, a lot of times they would study those old poems, but because the rules of the grammar were embedded in those poems, and the of those grammatical rules out of those poems. But alhamdulillah, there's been some revision. Maybe those books are still studied, but they're one of the books I studied, the author replaced those poems with poems about Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, also from Quranic ayat or dua or other things. He replaced those. Very nice. It's Bidayatun Nah was the name of it. So he says, in other words, anything that restrains one from following the truth and the Holy Quran is a frivolous discourse. Anything that leads astray is a frivolous discourse. All those things that create passion and sensuality, sin and transgression, discourse. It's a sin whether one sings or listens to a song. The Quranic verse quoted above is followed by the next verse, which says, and when our communications are recited to him, he turns back proudly, as if he has not heard them, as though in his ears were a heaviness, therefore announce to him a painful chastisement. So this the person is preferring to listen and waste his time with all of these poems or songs and these things. And when the Quran is recited, he would say, I don't want to listen. I like a lot better this song that this person is singing, or happiness, sadness, and I'd listen to that than Quran, for example. When we read in the about music, we said that when they hear these type of sounds, that they pass by with dignity and don't pay attention to those things. We treat them as background noise. And a lot of times we see this frivolous talk or frivolous discourse and things like that, because if we really look at it, we could use our time to do a lot of things. A lot of people say we don't have any time to do anything, but in reality, when we really look at it, we actually do have time, but we a lot of times we use our time to do a lot of other things that are unnecessary. For example, someone listens to music, the time that they could spend listen to one album of a artist, they could have spent that time doing something else, reading hadith, listening to Quran, doing something else with their time. For example, learning some lesson, listening to majlis. So we do have time, but a lot of times we choose to pass our time in a way that is frivolous. He says the tafsir of the term false words, that's mentioned in Surah 22, Surah Hajj, ayat 30, where it says, and avoid false words. He says, in addition to the phrase frivolous discourse, Quran also refers to singing by the term false words. Abu Basir inquired from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam about the tafsir of this ayat, and avoid false words. The Imam replied that it means singing. And in explanation to the ayat in Surah Furqan, Surah 25, ayat 72, it says, and they who do not bear witness to what is false, and when they pass by what is vain, they pass by nobly. This is the ayat I mentioned earlier, that when they pass by with dignity. The Imam Jawad alayhi salam said that the vain in this ayat, when they pass by what is vain, means singing. Also, another narration from Imam Jawad alayhi salam says it includes the evil words of one who is singing. It says the later portion of that same verse in Surah Furqan says, and when they pass by what is vain, they pass by nobly or with dignity. According to the Quran, when the people who are righteous, they pass by where the songs are being played, they pass by in a dignified manner, uninfluenced, unimpressed by those things. So when we hear the songs played, for example, in the stores or anywhere else, restaurant or these, we just treat, we don't pay attention to those things. It's like you're in the grocery store. You hear the music on the loudspeaker, but you're not there to buy your groceries. It's not like you hear the song on the radio and, God forbid, you start dancing in the grocery store and singing some song that comes on the radio. We're just in there. We treat it like background noise. And that's what it means by when they pass by what is vain, they pass by nobly. That's how we can apply that in this time. Whenever we hear it, just ignore it and just treat it as background noise. It's very hard to get away from. Day and you cannot go anywhere. Even you go to some restaurant, they even have it connected to the bathroom. The music playing in there. Music is playing in the bathroom, it's playing in the restaurant, it's playing at the gas station, outside on the speakers, in the elevator, in the grocery store, in the office. It's almost impossible to get away from unless you're in your home. So we're going to hear it one way or the other, and we should just treat it as background noise. He says a similar kind of verse appears in Surah Mu'minun, ayat 3, and who keep aloof from what is vain. They stay away from these type of things. It says both the above verses describe the qualities of a believer. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam and also Imam Rida alayhi salam have both explained the term vain words to imply music and singing, and the true worshippers of Allah refrain from these. Also, Imam Sadiq alayhi salam said, listening to music, songs, and useless words cultivate hypocrisy in the heart, in the same way as algae grows in the water. As we mentioned in the chapter with music, one thing leads to another. The singing ends up accompanied with music, and then music leads to one dancing, and then dancing leads to being with the other gender, and then that leads to something else, which ultimately it could all lead to zina. And we mentioned in Quran where it says, do not approach zina. So all of these are doorways or gateways to go towards that. It's one thing may seem like harmless, but the effects, the things connected to it, eventually it could lead to something else much worse. He says the same book in Al-Kafi mentions from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam that singing and music is a nest for the bird called hypocrisy. The venue of a singing program is a place where descends divine retribution. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam says, do not even enter houses the inhabitants of which are deprived of divine mercy. So he's reported to also say, have said, the house where music is played is not safe from sudden disasters. Supplications at such place are not answered, and angels do not enter this place. So a lot of times someone could be wondering why dua is not getting answered, but we also have narrations that say these type of things. We could be blocking our own self. House turn up loud and listening to music and dancing in the home, and then we're wondering, oh, I make dua all the time and my supplications not getting answered, or either some sort of tragedy befell the house and they wonder why. It could be this, and there's many reasons for that. It's a whole new discussion in itself, and many books have been written on that topic of how our prayers get answered, and what are those things that block our prayer from getting accepted. He says it's been established in the preceding chapter that when the divine punishment descends, it does not discriminate. So it hits both people. Hit if the righteous inhabitants are in a place that is committing a lot of sin, and they are there, it could hit both of them. He says the excuse, oh, we don't go to places there's music and song, but we dislike it. We go to places that have music and song, but we dislike it in our hearts. The author says it seems unlikely to be acceptable. Dislike needs to be expressed by one's actions also. Songs and music should be discouraged. We I think this time the author is writing this, I believe, in the 80s or before this. So in Iran, for where the author is from, was living, that they wouldn't go frequent. If they went to frequent song that had music, it would be like showing support for that. It's not like how it is where we live today, that you go to the store, there's music, you go everywhere there, we just don't listen to it. But this would be like saying that, I go to the nightclub, but I don't really like the music, and I don't listen to the music, and I dislike it in my heart, but I just go there. If someone would say, how could you do that? Like, why would you do that? So he says that it needs to be expressed by the actions, that we would just not go to that place. He says, Amir al-Mu'mineen, Imam Ali alayhi salam, he quotes Imam Ali saying that singing creates hypocrisy and causes poverty. And some may argue that we see the entertainers as rich, but them achieving wealth in this world only brings them further away from the true riches of the heavenly life to come. Their sin increases their distance from the right path in many cases. I was reading a narration earlier today, and it was talking about Musa alayhi salam, and he saw that two fishermen, one was worshiping an idol, and he would go and say some praise of the idol, and he would cast his net and he would bring it back full of fish. Then he praised the idol again, and he cast his net, and he did again, and he caught all of these fish. And then the believer came, cast his net, he didn't catch anything. And he said, Bismillah, cast his net, no fish. Then Musa was like, He threw the net again, Bismillah, he catch just a few fish, just enough for, to meet his needs. He says, Alhamdulillah, and goes. And Musa was asking Allah, like, how come, the believer didn't get the fish like the disbeliever did? But he says, what I gave the disbeliever, it didn't benefit him. He just got his reward, something in this world, but in the hereafter, he gets nothing. And the believer, didn't hurt him either. He got enough himself, and he is happy, and he says praise, and he has many rewards in the hereafter. So the thing is that one has to be content with what they have. And also sometimes we see that someone is sinning, but openly, and doing many things, but they have for example, they are driving Ferrari, they're living in mansion, they are have all of this wealth and all of these things, but this is just dunya. In the hereafter, they don't have anything. So we don't have to look at it in this way, that someone, if a believer is poor and a disbeliever is rich, then Islam. Because I've seen this before, especially traveling Middle East. The youth are having that doubt. They say the West is so well off and make a lot of money and have all these nice things, and we are struggling, we are poor, we are under war and have all these problems, and maybe it's because of Islam. They don't have Islam and they have all these things, but it's one of these tricks of Shaitan. And Shaitan is that he threatens us with poverty. So if someone brings this, these are some of the replies to that. But Amir al-Mu'mineen Salam said that singing creates hypocrisy and causes poverty. Person, even if they have money, it may be because they are that is pulling them away, and that is their punishment. The more they get, the more further away they get away from the path of Allah. A lot of times people Allah till they get some sort of affliction. So sometimes they're giving that person money, they're forgetful and they think about Allah. He says, punishment for singing. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, from his grave on the day of judgment, he will be blind, deaf, and dumb. The traditions also state that the singer will be recognized by those three signs. In another narration from Holy Prophet, he says that the molten lead will be poured into the ears of the one who listens to songs intentionally. So there's a very that we have. It says it's recorded from Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is from that group of people who will not be looked upon with mercy by Allah on the day of judgment. Also, Imam Sadiq alayhi salam says, one who respects a speaker becomes his slave. If the speaker calls towards Allah, the listener worships Allah. But if the speaker calls towards shaitan, then the listener has shaitan. This also applies to speakers on the minbar. We have to make sure that we pay attention not to listen to those people who preach misguidance under the guise of being ulama, for example. It's happening. We have to be very careful of what people are saying, and it may not be clear to the general public, but with knowledge a person will be able to discern between truth. They'll start noticing this person is preaching a bunch of nonsense on minbar. Maybe it sounds nice to the untrained, but when you have knowledge, you see many fallacies in those speakers. So we have to be careful and who we are listening to, who we allow our kids to listen to, and about the books that we are reading and these type of books. Because according to this narration, if one is calling towards misguidance, the listener is as if he is worshiping Shaitan. And if he is calling towards Allah, then it's as if he is worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Also narrated from alayhi salam that he said, whenever a person begins singing, two shaitans mount on his shoulders and continue to hit their heels on his chest till the time he sings the song. If one is the one kicked by the shayateen to be loved and admired, the author this is what he mentions. He says, if this is the case, why should we love and admire someone like this if the narrations say this about this person? Well, also, when we look at the singers, most of the time, their lifestyles are very haram lifestyle with their money. Maybe some of charity, but a lot of times the way they live their life, where they are reckless and they are womanizer, for example, or they don't care about halal and haram, and they are drinking and partying, drugs and other things, that type of rock and roll lifestyle, they used to call it. Imam Ali ibn Musa Rida alayhi salam says, one who avoids songs will be provided by Allah a tree which will produce such a nice sound that no one has ever heard before. But the one who has not kept away from songs will not be able to hear this sound. It says, continuing on this, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi in Tafsir Majma' al-Bayan, it says, one who has listened to too many songs will not be able to hear the ruhanis on the day of Qiyamah. They asked Rasulullah, what are these ruhanis? The Prophet said, they are the singers of heaven. Also, Imam Ali alayhi salam, it says it's found in Najr Balagha that Dawood alayhi salam will be the chief of the singers of paradise. Is the people who will listen to such songs from Dawood in heaven, the like of which have never been heard by anyone. However, only those who have refrained from listening to songs in the world would be able to hear those songs. So we gain from this that those who listen to songs will go to paradise by the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or paying for their sins in barzakh, or through the death that they experience, or other ways that Allah maybe forgive them, or intercession, or many other things. It's another topic, but we gain from this that they will go to the Jannah, but they will not be able to hear, or they'll be deprived of these bounties in heaven that people get these, because they refrained in this world from listening to music. So Allah will bless them with this barakat or ni'mah in hereafter. Whereas the one who listens to songs in this world, they will be in Jannah, for example, after paying for their sins, but they won't be able to hear these sounds. This is reserved exclusively for the group who refrain from music. It says that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says that calamities will befall my ummah, my community, as sinking of the earth and rain of stones. People said, when would that happen? When will the calamities come on the community? He said, the Prophet, he said, when the instruments of music become common, singing girls are in great number, and the use of intoxicants is widespread. We look around what is happening today and what has been happening for quite some time. And then look at the state of the Muslim world. What state are they in? Prophet said, by Allah, many such that they shall spend the night in merrymaking and sensuality, and in the daytime become like monkeys and pigs. It will be the consequence of considering the prohibited things permissible. They consider the haram as halal. They will be occupied with singing girls, frequently taking intoxicants, devour interest, and will dress in the clothes made of silk. We have to ask ourselves, what is happening? What is happening now when we look around? And we have to pray for the reappearance of our 12th Imam, the Farajahu Sharif, to come and make things clear for people, and to justice in this land. We see that the problem of the late Maraja, he used to say that the reason we are in the state now is because the people left the path of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. They abandoned Ahlul Bayt, they abandoned the ways of Ahlul Bayt, they abandoned the path of Rasul. They went and did, in order for them to get their honor and their prestige and their good graces back, they need to go back and return towards the way of the Holy Prophet, the way of true Islam. And we see this, like we mentioned the story of Nabi Yunus alayhi salam, how they were left their prophet and went a different way, abandoned the prophet and wouldn't take his advice and chose another way, and how the destruction was on them. And they were the only people. They turned back to their prophet, they sought forgiveness en masse, and they clung tightly to the prophet after that, and Allah averted the punishment from them. We also have to do the same thing and make a firm intention that we will follow the path of our imams and our holy prophet. And inshallah, the more that this becomes prevalent, then we will be better as a community. And it starts with us. I had one of the mujtahid, he was talking to me in Najaf, and he said something that really struck me. He said, so what if this is right now, today? He says, what if Imam Zaman, Ajallah Ta'ala Farajuhu Sharif, has 312 loyal followers, noble followers, pious individuals that will be there for him? It's 300 13. What if you are the one that could have made that difference, and then you are the one that has withheld the reappearance, made the ghaiba longer, because we think of our, it's just me, it's just one person, what can I do, as one individual? But he says, what if there was 312? It was you. You were, all you had to do was get yourself together, and you could have brought that. And really made me think about, because most of the time we don't think about that. We say, we're only one person, what can we do? But if we think like that, we never get anything done. But if we think that we can make a difference, we can actually. I mean, another one of the scholars was telling, like, don't underestimate yourself or what you can do. He was saying, like, look at Sheikh Zakzaki in Nigeria, have like millions of Shias that were converted under his hand and following the path of Ahlul Bayt. There's one man there, he, guiding them in that case. Or also, I believe Jabir ibn al-Juhfi, he said, narrated or memorized like 80,000 narration. Imagine that, like one person, 80,000 narration. That's amazing. But we say like, oh, I'm just one person. But a lot of times we look at one person, they can make a huge difference. He says, singing instigates one to commit fornication, which we mentioned, I was saying earlier, the steps that lead towards that. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has mentioned explicitly, singing is the stepping stone to zina, to fornication. Because we said singing leads to dancing, dancing leads to one dancing close with the opposite sex, and arouses sexual desires, and then leads towards zina. He said the author says songs are responsible for awakening the sensual desires of man, which are soon manifested. It's the same whether one sings a song or merely listens to it. He forgets Allah, and he is prepared to do all sorts of indecency. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, he says, and all those wasteful pastimes are haram, which make one forgetful of Allah, like songs and playing musical instruments. He says, yes, music one shameless and lacking in self-respect. It also destroys the feeling of love, compassion, and mercy, reducing society to a nightmare, is what the author has stated. There's no difference of opinion between the Maraja that the singing is impermissible. There's ijma on this. And it could be said that, he says there could be ijma on this topic. And the writer of one of the books, he says, to consider singing and music haram is one of the, we call it Dururiyatul Islamiyya, the essentials of religion. And he says that if a Muslim says that singing is not haram, then he becomes kafir, because it is one of those things, it's an essential part of religion. We have many of these things, and we've explained this before, but just for brevity, we'll bring an example. For example, hijab. I believe that hijab is a part of Islam, an essential part of religion. Now, if someone doesn't wear hijab, then they are committing a sin, and that's between them and Allah. And inshallah, they overcome this and they gain the strength to wear hijab, and we should encourage to wear it. But if they know that it is haram to forego hijab and they do it, they are sinning. But the difference comes when they say that, you know what, I don't believe hijab is wajib. I think it's mustahab. You can wear it, you cannot wear it, who cares? Not a big deal. I don't really think it's part of Islam. I don't think it's part of the deen. I don't think, it's essential to do it. And then they are rejecting one of the essentials of religion. And the same thing goes with many other things. Drinking alcohol, for example. They say, you know what, you can drink or not drink or whatever. I don't think it's haram to drink alcohol. This will put one outside of Islam, or Salat, for example, or any of these other that we have. You say, we don't have to it's not haram if we don't do it. Then this will put them outside of Islam. He says so we shouldn't try to justify it. If someone listens, they should say, yeah, I know I shouldn't, and may Allah forgive me, I'm struggling with that, and find a way to overcome whatever it is they're doing. They shouldn't try to justify and say, I don't believe this is haram. He says the traditions state that music and singing is haram or mutawatir, meaning that they are so widely narrated that there's no way that it could be fabricated narrations. He said there's a slight difference of opinion that exists as to the meaning and connotation of the word song. The majority of the mujtahideen believe that any kind of sound capable of creating a desire for joyful mirth and sensual feelings is a song, and that is haram. He says as about reading the Quran in the tune of the songs. He says it's haram to recite Quran in the characteristics of songs. As I said earlier, like maybe mimicking a popular song and reading the ayat in the tone or the rhythm of that song in order to make it like the song. Similarly, it is also recite Noha, Marsi, same type of way. He says it is immaterial poetry or prose that is being recited. Rather, rendering of the sacred compositions into songs carries double punishments, one for the sin of singing songs and the other for causing disrespect to a sacred text. So it carries two sins in this case. He says every melodious song is not sound is not a song. If Quran or Noha is recited in a nice way, a pleasant voice, without unduly turning it in the throat, it is not haram. Rather, it's desirable to do this. So we shouldn't recite the Quran in an ugly tone, if we can say something like kabih, like not nice, or sound bad. We should sound nice, but we shouldn't mimic the singers, is what is emphasized here. It says that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, recite the Quran in a pleasant voice, in the style of the Arabs. You are ordered to avoid the transgressors and doers of greater sins. Certainly, such people will appear in the world who will recite the Quran in a singing manner to make the listeners emotional. It is not allowed to go near these people or to call them near to you. The hearts of these people have deviated, and those who are influenced by them shall also have their hearts deviated. The clip, I remember seeing it long ago, and I says, sounds so strange that someone is doing this. And I found the YouTube video as an example, and I will share it with Brother Abbas after this, or I'll put it in box, probably is better. I'll put it in the chat box, and you can see is someone is doing this with salawat as an example to see like how can someone do this. But maybe about halfway through the video it turns towards that, and you'll see like, wow, it's very strange, and why would someone do this type of thing with salawat, for example. He says while describing the signs of the arrival of Day of Judgment, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, such kind of people will appear in the world that they would learn the Quran for worldly benefits and will recite it in a singing tune. However, there are many traditions to the effect that reciting the Quran in a pleasant voice is mustahab, or we must ensure that its tone is not that of singing. So reciting pleasantly, but not imitating the rhythms of the singers. He says about singing and music during weddings. To the three conditions, some of the mujtahideen, the scholars, have allowed women to sing on the occasion of marriages. The first condition is that no men should be able to hear the sound of singing, not even those who are mahram. Secondly, the songs must not be based on false statements. Lastly, the singing must not be accompanied with any kind of music. He says a few scholars have permitted playing the small tambourine with the skin on it. As Shahid Thani, he says that the tambourine could be played in a wedding if it doesn't have those things that go around it, that jingle, or we can say. These are because of narrations that maybe are exclusions, or in these cases they can be done. He says, however, precaution is desirable, and hence on the occasion of weddings also women should avoid singing. The playing of tambourine should also, is what the author states, even though we have these exceptions, precaution should be taken, and we should just avoid these things because maybe they lead to something else or they get out of hand. Said Sheikh Ansari quotes Shahid Thani in his book Maqasid, and Sayyid Murtada also says that precaution is the way towards salvation. So in any case, we can see that caution is the way to go, because we allow the sin. What if the men here, or it gets out of hand, or they start singing bad type of songs or poetry, and there's no need for this type of thing, so it's best to avoid it altogether. So alhamdulillah, we finished this chapter 16, the 16th greater sin of singing. And we ran out of time for this. And next week, we'll go to the 17th chapter, which is about lying. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali. Jazakallah.